Good evening. It's nearly Christmas. Our next story is set in a beautiful small town in 1960s Switzerland. It was Christmas Eve, and Sister Anne was traveling in a cozy train carriage, which was passing through the beautiful valleys. The mountains around the valleys were covered in snow, and it was just after sunset. The cabin had a beautiful decor, and people on the train were in a really joyful mood because they were finally going to meet their loved ones who were waiting for them at the train station to celebrate Christmas together. The children were looking out the window and smiling as they were thinking about opening up the Christmas presents in the morning. The elderly couple in the carriage were passing candies around to everybody as little treats. Sister Anne got one candy and she thanked the elderly couple. She was pretty tired, as it had been a really long day for her, and wanted to get home to her cozy bed and snuggle into her warm duvet. The train stopped at the train station. Sister Anne got out with her bag and walked out the station. The atmosphere was beautiful. There were choir groups singing old Christmas carols in the streets, and the shops were just closing as the shop owners wanted to rush home to be with their families on Christmas Eve. Sister Anne walked past little houses, and she stood and stopped at one particular house where an elderly couple lived, and she could see the warm lights coming out from their window along with beautifully lit Christmas tree. The living room looked so cozy, as it also had a beautifully lit fireplace. She stood there for a while and smiled at the couple, but then she was suddenly shaken by their dog, who was luckily chained. She quickly moved and started walking towards her house, but she could still hear the dog barking behind her. She got to her house and searched her bag for her keys. She opened up the door and came into a freezing cold house, as she had forgotten to close one of the windows early that day. She quickly rushed to close it and lit the fire in the fireplace. She turned on the hot water tap in the bathtub, and after a hot bath, she changed into her nightgown and came downstairs to make some hot chocolate. She did not normally drink hot chocolate this late, but because it was Christmas, she wanted to enjoy it late at night. By this time, the living room was warm and cozy, and after putting her warm treat into her favorite cup, she snuggled into her sofa and wrapped a blanket around her. She started to watch TV, and just when she was about to get up to switch the channels, she saw something move at the corner of her eye, like something had gone past her. She quickly turned to her right, but there was nothing there. She turned her TV off and started walking up the stairs towards her bedroom, but she heard a knock at her door. She could now hear somebody singing an old Christmas carol, which her grandmother used to sing to her right outside her door. She walked down and opened her front door. to nobody. And the only thing that was there was the wind carrying the snow outside, as now it started to snow quite heavily. Sister Anne now knew that there was somebody else beside her in that house. She grabbed her Bible, which was on the old wooden table next to her front door, and started reciting the verses out loud as she walked up the stairs. Being in her late 60s, she was finding it hard to walk up the stairs quickly. And then, just out of nowhere, all the lights went off. The house was now pitch black, and the only light coming was from the embers of the fireplace, which was about to go out soon too. She was now unable to read any verses of the Bible, and was standing at the stairs with the Bible in her hand. And then, in the darkness, she heard someone breathing behind her. Someone standing at the step right behind her, slowly breathing into her ear. She started reciting of the verses she knew and gripped the stairs handrail tightly as she walked down. She could still hear the breathing behind her. She then quickly grabbed her storeroom handle in the darkness and got out her lantern, which luckily had matches next to it. She lit up the lantern and slowly turned around to an empty living room. And the breathing had stopped by this point. Sister Anne was shaking. She walked up the stairs as quickly as she could while reciting the verses of the Bible. She ran into her bedroom and closed the door behind her. She locked the door and got into her bed. And just as she did, she heard footsteps out in the hallway, as if somebody was pacing up and down the hallway. And then it was complete silence. After a short while, she heard a baby crying. It seemed to be coming outside from her window. She walked up to her window with a lantern and saw a young couple, which she actually recognized from the train early that evening. They were carrying their newly born baby, walking frantically towards the town's hospital. Earlier that night, when Sister Anne was just about to get off the train, the young couple, who had a newly born baby, asked her if she could carry the baby just for a short while so they could get their bags. She smiled at them and stretched her arms out to carry the baby. The baby was smiling, but as soon as she picked up the baby, it started crying. The crying became quite loud and intense, to the point the mother of the baby quickly grabbed the baby back from Sister Anne. Sister Anne was actually possessed by a demon who had latched onto her. She was returning home that evening on the train from an exorcism which she had witnessed earlier. The demon left the body of its victim and latched onto Sister Anne. And this is the reason the nearly born baby cried when Sister Anne picked her up, as the baby saw the demonic entity behind her. And this is the reason the elderly couple's dog started barking at her, as it was barking at the demon behind her. The young couple's baby was so affected by the presence of this demon that it had not stopped crying ever since. Sister Anne held her, and her parents were now in a panic, rushing towards the hospital, not knowing what was wrong with their baby. And just when the couple was out of Sister Anne's sight, she lifted her head up, looking away from the street, holding her lantern, and her eyes lit up in fear. There, standing behind her, in the window's reflection, was the demonic entity standing right behind her, looking at her. Sister Anne was never to be seen again. However, there is a legend about this story, that she went completely mad and runs around the forest at night, screaming. Good night.